Good morning. Ayin Beis, volume 3. We finished the paragraph on page 1277. I'll briefly sum it up. So we're talking about what mitzvahs accomplish, which means in addition, God created the universe. He created Gan Eden. These are God's creations on their own. They obviously have divine energy in them. And divine energy that constantly renews itself, perpetual, to keep them in existence. Gan Eden is a special part of existence. It says, Havaya Lekim Vayita, Hashem Alekim Gan Be'eden. So you have the Havaya and Alekim, as we learned earlier, what Gan Eden is on its own. Then comes the human being is placed into Gan Eden. Vayanichehu. God placed Adam and Chava into Gan Eden. La'avda o l'shamra. To work the garden and to protect it. Which means Avedas Adam of Mitzvos Sesa, Mitzvos Leisesa. The way they did it was still in a spiritual way, but it reflects the entire Aved of the human being, both then and in generations, later generations, by us after Matan Torah, where the mitzvahs become Gashmis Dika mitzvahs. And what is the purpose of all that? Is to increase Teisvus Eiris in Gan Eden, as we learned at length. And these Teisvus Eiris, Meruba ala Iker, they're even more than what was there in the first place. In other words, it's not just some addition, but it's actually the dividends are greater than the principal, basically. Yet still, all the way back, I believe on page 1211 or 1212, or those pages maybe a little later, he did say that it's still, this Eir in Gan Eden is still Mamala Kalam. It's not Sevav Kalam. I'll just refer to that actual place where he said it. When he adds, when he said, yeah, on page 1211, right at the beginning. So he said, "The Mukol Mokim Yesh Lemesh Agilu Be'isa Muhus Hainu Hakol Agilu de Mamala Kalam." But the Gili is a far greater one than is there on its own. This is critical, this point, because there's still a higher level of reward, so to speak. And remember, reward here can be both mean the Giluyim of Elikus, Schar Mitzvah Mitzvah, and ultimately the ultimate is the revelation of the accessing and the revelation of the mitzvah in its very root and source, all the way in the highest levels, like the kalim that are rooted higher than the Eir. So in Gan Eden, there's a gili of Eir. And we're going to learn about this more soon, maybe today or in the next few pages. And that's primarily from the kavanah of the mitzvah, as we learned. The Maisa mitzvah must be done, no matter what. Without the action, you don't have anything. But once you have the action of a mitzvah and you have its kavanah, the kavanah generates energy in Gan Eden Atachten, Kabbalah soil, and the deeper kavanahs, the deeper intentions, create energy and generate energy in Gan Eden Elyon. But there's something even deeper about a mitzvah. The mitzvah reaches all the way in the core etzem, because this is the etzem Ratzon Elyon. This is God's desire. It's not just the increased energy. Yes, it also increases Giluyim in Gan Eden and in Seder Shtalshlus, all gets elevated. But there's something even further that it reaches in the highest places, the whole purpose of creation, the Pnimiyas Ha'er, as he put it. And deeper, the Helam Ha'er and the Helam Ha'atzmi. As I explained, I'm not going to go through the difference between these right now, because I already explained it in the last few classes. But they reach all the way into the very core of the divine. So actually, they're achieving both things. They're reaching the core. Through the kavanah, it comes in a gili. That's why Simcha Shal Mitzvah brings it out in a revealed way. The mitzvah itself reaches the esem and gili is through Simcha Shal Mitzvah and the kavanah is Rusa Deliba, Chol Moedecha, Ava, Rabba, and Tainugim, the different language that we use. Rusa Deliba, as he said here, Rusa Deliba, and Simcha Shal Mitzvah is the expression used on page 1276. So it's a very profound love, but at the same time, it's reaching the deepest levels, and you really want to have both. Now, with that backdrop or that background of discussion, he goes into the very set to understand then why we say there's no mitzvah in this world, when indeed we know the pasuk says there is. And in Gan Eden there's a schar mitzvah, which is not waiting for the future la'asad love. So the answer, he began to develop this answer on page 1274 and said we have to understand the Eifan HaMshacha, how mitzvahs, what's the manner with what mitzvahs, what are the dynamics of how mitzvahs actually draw and generate this energy. So the dynamics is that the mitzvah comes from Ratzon Elyon of the Eibush to the deepest levels above. The Pnimi, not the Chetzeni Sa'er, which God invests in the creation of existence, which is a means to an end, but the very purpose, which is Torah and mitzvahs itself. Yes, in this world, in Tachtenim, but Torah and mitzvahs. So the mitzvah, when you do a mitzvah, it generates and reaches that etzem. However, in our time today, you don't see the gili of that etzem, of the shadish of the mitzvahs. You only see the mitzvah itself as it's mislabish and gashmis. And that's why mitzvah, there's the letters mem vav hey, the yud k and vav k, so it's mamshech havaya, which is the premier sa'er, as he said, these highest levels. Yud k and vav k, it's mamshech. But the yud k today is still in the concealed through a garment called mem tzadik. Ad bash, the chiluv, the exchange of yud k into vav into mem tzadik. La'asad love, as we learned at length on page 1276 and 1277, la'asad love, v'nigla kvei davai, v'lo yikona feid merecha, this garment of mem tzadik will be removed, and will have the actual gili of yudke, the root, the shadish and mokir of the kalim of mitzvahs as they are in their root, the yudke, and also the vavke will be illuminated by the yudke and be elevated to that level, and yet the Yud-K still will remain higher. So essentially today, the Chitzenius dominates. What we see is mostly the external elements of all these levels, and L'Oslo will be the Pnimius of them all. And the Pnimius will also elevate and obviously reveal that this is the Chitzenius of this Pnimius. So the world, so the Chitzenius will exist, but it will be reflection of what is inside, because the inner will be revealed through the outer, so to speak. So you'll have Mem Tzadik, Yud K, Vav K, and even furthermore, Yud K, because the Vav K too will be on the level of Yud K. As he explained on page 1277. Okay. And I believe this is the meaning. Now I want to go back to the parentheses. V'yesh lema b'derech efsher, t'kamei b'chinas pnimis atik u pnimis abba, that the revelation will be the air pnimi. So pnimius atik, pnimius abba, you could type simply, that will be the revelation of the pnimius abba, pnimius atik and pnimius abba. Not just the chitzenius. Kamoi kain, ye pnimius abba ve'ima, there'll also be the inner of chachma and bina, and the pnimius of zun. You don't necessarily have to say he's talking about pnimius abba, pnimius atik that he speaks about afterwards. I read it again, and it's very simple. You could just say he's talking about the pnimius, that within the Vavke will be revealed the Yudke. So the Pnimius will be revealed, as he says, so there'll be the revelations and the Asad Lobby of all these Pnimius. On a deeper level, he says afterwards, then he says, Haba Hatalia, it's interdependent. This was the last thing we learned. Interdependent, because what the difference between Yudke and Vavke is because today Yudke is concealed. So therefore, Vavke is what revealed as the outer dimension of the mitzvah, as it manifests in Gashmis, as we relate to it. Avakasha primis is Gala. But when the inner dimension of the mitzvah, of the Yudke will be revealed, Pnimius, so automatically the Vavke will also be elevated. He says, Avakasha primis is Gala, ye gili ha primis gam b'chinas Vavke, v'ye Vavke k'may b'chinas Yudke. Okay, in the last parentheses, I'll just sum up again, because it was a little dense, especially the second half. So he said, L'chayri yeshlemer, that there'll still be an advantage of Yudke will be still higher than Vavke, that because even when Pnimius Abba is revealed that it's Pnimius Atik, still Pnimius Atik is still ultimately higher because it doesn't even have the element of Abba, of Chachma altogether. It's the pure, undiluted pleasure of the divine. In Chachma, it's the Pnimius of Chachma, that it's not wisdom and intelligence, but it still manifests through Chachma, through some Gilui, or you can even say Koyach Pnimi, because Chachma is a Koyach Pnimi and Atik is a Koyach Makif. So though Pnimius Abba will, as he puts it this way, Shu Kamoy Pnimius Atik, Makol Mokim, Pnimius Atik will remain above it. And as I explained yesterday, because you need both. You need that you want to have in the interface, you want to have the pure divine pleasure, which is Pnimius Atik, but you also want it to radiate into what is known as existence, even though now Vavke and the lower levels of existence are earlier were dominant. Now they're being elevated to this level. So you want that Pnimius Atik to radiate into Chachma, into Pnimius Abba. And then he says, the Efshei that this is also B'chol is B'china Zun. So the simple way of understanding it, that like he said in the previous parentheses, that this Pnimius will also impact Zun. Zohar Malchus will also be elevated into a deeper Pnimius Dika place. But here we have to focus that even though it'll be elevated, Malchus will still be higher. Malchus Tia B'chinas is Galus Hela Ma'atzmi Mamish, because Malchus ultimately really captures the etzem more than anything, like the Kalim do. His Galus Hela Ma'atzmi Mamish, and that's the Ikarin and Shakeli Tia Begilim P'nesh is Galus Bashar Sha'atzmi. So essentially, you can say Zoh, even though the Pnimius of Zoh will be revealed, as will be the Pnimius of Abba Chachma. However, Malchus really captures the Sheresh Atzmi. Like we said, there's the two things here. The revelation of Yudke, that's the Sheresh Atzmi, and even Vavke, the things that were more in the outer elements of the mitzvah will also be elevated. So Malchus really goes into the category of being elevated in the revelation of the Sheresh Atzmi. And Zoh, even though it's the Pnimius, so in a way you could say Malchus and Zoh is like Abba and Atik, because Atik is ultimately higher than Chachma and Pnimius Abba. Pnimius Atik is higher than Pnimius Abba. Malchus is ultimately higher in the future than Zoh. That's how I read it now. So because Malchus ultimately is the lowest level, which is like the Yesh, the Keli, the mitzvah, that will, and the Sheresh Atzmi will be revealed, the Sheresh HaKeli will be revealed, the Sheresh Atzmi of the Keli will be revealed in the future.
So why
that's one second. That's a summary of where we reached right now, the end of this paragraph. And if anybody wants to ask something, go ahead, and then we'll continue.
Why is saying Bichlolus B'chinas Zun? He should say B'chinas Zoh.
Because he wants to say the whole Ishtalshlus, everything is elevated. You see in the previous paragraph, it's Pnimius Zun. Because everything is elevated. Remember,
including Malchus.
Then he qualifies. Pnimius Zun, Avol, Malchus has a special quality when the Pnimius is revealed. Even deeper than, so Pnimius Zun, because remember, everything has Gilui and Etzem in it. Even Malchus has something of Gilui in it too. Malchus is one of the 10 spheres. So first, the Pnimius of all the spheres he's saying, and then he's saying, and Malchus specifically also has this element. That's how I would interpret
it. There seems to be, this is a separate question, it's related to all this, but there seems to be two separate logics, both of which make sense, but at the end, they seem to be making different points. First, he says, L'chor yesh lamer the makom hakam yehei Yud-K Gavoa Mailev Mevav-K. So he says, even though in the future, lastly, Vav-K is going to be elevated to Yud-K, it's going to be Yud-K, Yud-K. But still, Yud-K is going to be higher than Vav-K, because I guess the Pnimius of Atik is ultimately higher than the Pnimius of Arich, if that's where we were talking about the highest levels
Not
of Kesser.
Pnimius Arich, Pnimius Abba.
Thank you. But that's one logic. On the other hand, you'll have at the end, Malchus is going to be higher than everything, or the Kalim, because it's a Shorish Atzmi, it's going to be the highest. So, meaning higher than what's above it right now. That's the So if Malchus is going to be the highest, it's not the same thing
Malchus
as
will be connected with Yud-K. What you just said about Yud-K being higher than Vav-K, that's where the Sheirish HaKelim is, the Yud-K.
Okay, got it. All right.
But still, the Asiv Lavoi, they are not going to be equal because it said the Yud K will be Begilui Kifishu
So I explained yesterday the reason for that. Because even La'asad Lavoi, you still want to have, the existence will still exist. So even though there'll be a Dira Lo Yizbarach B'Tachtenim, and even though the lowest levels, even the Giluyim will be elevated, but a Gilui is still not an Etzem. So even when the Giluyim are permeated with Atzmi of Yud-K, it's still not Etzem itself. That's the point. So you want to have the Etzem Begilui. Yud-K represents Pnimiyus Ha'er, Muhus Va'atzmus Ha'er was the word he used. You see, the problem you're having here is because you're doing this mechanically and mathematically. You're trying to figure out what's what. As I said, let's go back to the mashal. I said it many times. If you're not going to do it with the mashal, you'll just be memorizing words and levels, like engineering. There's a mashal here. What is God's inner intention in the creation of existence? What is God's inner intention in a mitzvah? Today, that is concealed from us. Even when we do a mitzvah, the Yud-K, which is the inner Pnimi Se'er, what it means, Muhuz Va'atzmus Ha'er. Translate that into simple English, and you'll begin to understand what he's saying here. Instead of just putting it as a level, it's referring to the God's innermost, what God is so-called feeling and thinking, Kavyachal, obviously, in the purpose of everything. Not just the art, and not even the mitzvah as it relates to the world, but the inner dimensions of it, the Yud-K that he talked about at length on page 1275, God's inner intention with it all. So today that's concealed, and we only see it through the mem tzadik of a mitzvah, through a garment, because we wouldn't be able to deal with it. We couldn't contain it, as he said. If you look at the bottom of page 1275, he says very clearly, how can we, in this material world, the whole point of Ayin Beis and Chassidus, that we are limited, finite creatures, how can we contain all of that divine, infinite power of the Etzem Ha'or in the mitzvah? All we can contain is what's after the tzimtzum, after concealment, after garments. That's why even a mitzvah goes through that too. It's still a mitzvah. It's not just like creation of existence, it's not just Gan Eden on its own, but it's a mitzvah that's based slapshus in this world. L'osid lavei, that garment will be removed, and you'll see the mitzvah in its full glory as being the revelation of the etzem mohus ha'or, and even deeper, the helam ha'or, and the helam ha'atzmi, as I explained, is most reflective of the divine, even higher than altogether Gili. So we'll have all three elements: the real pnimius of revelation itself, the concealment, which means higher than revelation, and Helama Atzmi from the Yechelis Ha'atzmas, the Kol Yochel, the Yechelis Ha'atzmas, as he explained, where the root of the containers are. And all this is said earlier, by the way. I'm not saying anything that the Rebbe Rashab did not say. I'm just bringing it together. That will be revealed. That's one thing. What will happen to the Giluyim that were there before? What will happen to that which was Vavke through all these thousands of years, Bizman Hazeh, before Mashiach comes? So he says the second thing is Vavke will also be elevated. The Giluyim of Gan Eden, the Giluyim of Seder Shtalshlus, the Giluyim of the mitzvahs as they relate to existence will also be elevated to the Yud-K, but it's the level of Gilui. Gilui can never be an Atzmi. So even when the Vavke now can also benefit and see the Pnimius, in other words, we'll also see not just the Pnimius HaKavana of the artist within the art, the Pnimius HaKavana of the builder of the home within the home, but the home itself will also feel it. Even the basic revelation that you see when you walk into a home, which is the Vavke, will also experience the Pnimius, but still it's not the Pnimius. It's still the outer dimension of the actual home in which you live. In other words, there'll be a world, there'll be birds, and there'll be a sky, and there'll be an earth. There'll be everything we see in existence. As a matter of fact, in the early stages, there doesn't even have to be any miracles. The same world. But you'll have the Aleph of Aluf Shalelim in Goyla will make it a Geula. What does the Rambam say? The business of the world will be nothing but to know God. But there'll be a world. There'll be a world exactly as it is right now. But instead of materialism being an end in itself, you'll see in materialism as a means to Gilui Elikus. So the Vavke too will experience the Yudke. The earth will exist, the same earth, but it will be filled with the divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea, completely covered. So it will recognize the Yudke. It'll be revealed. But at the end of the day, the world itself, even when you reveal the Yudke and the Vavke, it still doesn't mean it is the Yudke. The Etzem is the Etzem. It's still God and his previous intentions and his deepest Helam and Helam Ha'atzmi that's still higher than Gilui. It's just that it will also permeate and also saturate and infuse the Giluyim of existence, the Vavke, on the level of Yudke. Now, when I say the world, I meant the world and also the mitzvahs as it relates to the world, the Vavke within the mitzvah as it's revealed today. So you have to use the mashal. If not, it just become words. What's Vavke? What's Yudke? If you have to explain this to someone, you're going to have to explain it with an example of what will happen in the future that's in contrast to what's now. And the two things that he says, the Yudke will be revealed, which is the Sheirish Atzmi of the Kalim will be revealed today. They're not revealed. And that too will affect the Giluyim. The Ur too will be elevated. In this case, the Vavke, the Ur, and that's revealed to us from the mitzvah as it relates to existence.
And this is what you mean, Oyer Pnimi ve'atzmi, about the Vavke. L'osilis will be Oyer Pnimi ve'atzmi.
I just said, tell me in the language of the mashal that I said, because
I understand,
it's hard for me to speak mechanics and mathematics.
No, not mechanics. You're saying about Vavke,
I asked you a question. Explain it in the language I just said. Oyer Pnimi ve'atzmi means the innermost intentions of God in the creation of existence and in the giving of mitzvahs that to transform existence. So what's your question? Use that language.
Okay, so my question is the Vavke will be lower than the Yudke. What few lines...
I don't know what to say. I just explained it.
That's what you explained. That's what you explained. What few lines later he's saying, כאשר הפנימיוס יסגלה, יהיה גילוי הפנימיוס גם בבחינת Vavke, ויהיה Vavke כמו בבחינת Yudke.
And then he says, ומכל מוקים, yeh Yudke gavoy b'mayla mevavke. It's not. I just explained this. Didn't I just explain this? Are you asking something on what I said or prior to what I said? That what I just said is understandable to everybody, or?
Yes. No. It was beautiful. It's very clear. It's a review of what you said yesterday, and it's very clear.
Okay, so Shlomo, you have a question?
Okay.
So as I would understand it, when we will in the Lasim Lavo, when we shake a lulav, an esrog, we're going to have revealed to us the pinimius, the intention, the pinimius of the kavana of Hashem, the Yudke in that mitzvah. And the esrog himself, when we look at the dollar meaning, we will also see a Yudke, or maybe the Vavke, but in a revealed way. But we won't see the esrog itself as a physical thing, but we'll see God's name, Yudke Vavke, will be revealed in that actual esrog. We'll see a godliness there.
Yeah. Yes. Correct.
When I think about this, I think what you just said was a beautiful vision you gave. It's somewhat like Lahabdi. No, we're not a tzaddik. I'm not tzaddik. We're not a tzaddik. Maybe even Laseilah, I'm not going to be a tzaddik. Well, it'd be nice, but I doubt it. But it's like when the tzaddikim saw energy. They saw a table. There's a table there, but they also saw all kinds of energy happening there. Something special, something holy happened there that 100 years ago. So you'll see the table, and you'll see that holy energy as well. Is that a fair example?
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, it's on a very basic level, but yes.
Okay.
You know, it could also, it's like similar to the verse that we say, that in the future, a person will not, lo yilamda oid ish, one will not teach another. Ki kulam yedu esi, because everyone will know me, esi, God, etzem. And then he says, l'miktanam v'ad gedolam, from young to old. So the question is, if everyone knows God, and no one has to teach each other, why do you say katan and gadol? Because there'll still be levels. In each level, in its own way, will experience the divine, the etzem. It goes back to etzem and giluyim. We know clearly Mashiach will teach. So how is that consistent? Because we're not talking, he won't teach the basics, he'll teach deeper things. But the point I'm making here is that the structure of existence will not disappear, at least not in the early stages of Geula. Later there's another discussion, Chad Charuv, Shemayim Chadoshim, Eretz Chadosh, there'll be a new heaven, new earth. But even that, so even when you say, you see, this is critical, that God desired a dira b'tachtenim, does not mean that tachtenim is God. It means he desired dafken tachtenim a dira. So when you look at tachtenim, there's two things. There's the world, and that it's a dwelling place for godliness. And they become one. Yes, the dwelling place becomes one with the divine because it's the keli for it. But at the end of the day, there's still a distinction between the God that's dwelling there and the tachtenim in which he's dwelling. One is the place he's dwelling in, one is himself. Even on that level. He doesn't make a distinction there between kelim. He could even say the kelim who are rooted in the sheresh atzmi, it's still kelim. It's still not atzmus. It's just rooted in the highest levels of etzem. But a keli is still a keli because there was atzmus before there were kelim. It's just now that God created kelim, and those kelim reflect his deepest dimensions, so to speak. But that he does not say here, does not say explicitly. But if you really want to take it all the way, you could even say that Yudke itself is not etzem mamash. It relative to Vavke, it's atzmi. But at the end of the day, the Eibishter is higher than all of it. But that's another discussion which we talked about a bit. We'll discuss it more. But the point I just wanted to make was that even when something's elevated, it still doesn't mean it becomes exactly that level. Because then you destroy, if you eliminate, remember the whole point is that post-Simsum consciousness should experience pre-Simsum reality, not eliminating the post-Simsum reality. If you eliminate existence, then there's no question. You reveal the pre-Simsum oir and no more existence. You want, the Chiddush is the paradox, that in existence should also experience that which is higher and beyond existence, that once upon a time, or not once upon a time, on that level, on its own, existence could not exist in the presence of the infinite light before the Tzimtzum. So the Chiddush is that you want to have both. And in other Asias, in different words, you want Etzem and Giluyim. We haven't finished this subject. We're going to learn now further. But remember, you can ask a bigger question. What do we need Gan Eden for? And the whole Seder Shtalshus once you're reaching such levels. But as we'll see, those are critical because that's the Gili. That's like asking, why do we need Avodah? Like I said, if you have the Etzem in the Kalim and Tachtenim, why do you need Avodah? The problem is it's not on our terms. And it's not revealed within us. That's why we need the Mutfa, Murgish, Muskul. That's why we need to grow. As I explained yesterday, if we don't have our preparation and priming, and that we work on refining ourselves, the Etzem remains dormant within us. It's somewhat similar to what I've been explaining in Tanya. Chapter 2 says the Neshama is a chelik elikam mal mamish, but without chapter 4 and 5, without Torah Mitzvos, it remains an atzmi within the Neshama, yes, but the Neshama itself right now is not, it's not revealed in the fullest sense. When the Neshama is Eisik and Torah Mitzvos, and it embraces the king, in this case, embraces the king even as he is in his garments. Because literally it says in chapter 4, a little similar, that the Torah Mitzvos manifests in garments, and yet even when you embrace the king in his garments, you're still embracing the king himself, but it's still concealed somewhat. La'asad lavi, you'll see the king himself. And then in chapter 5, which I just began, chapter 5, he talks about how the very mind of a person becomes one with God when he learns Torah. So if you don't have Torah and mitzvahs, the etzem remains, but it's not begilui. And gilui is critical because then it's on our terms, it's internalized, it's integrated. And the whole point of dira b'tachtenim is not just atzmi should be here, but atzim should be dira. should be an open, revealed dira, not like a world today where the etzem is also here and the kavana is here. But what do we see? The world dominates, materialism dominates. And you want a world where you see begilui elikus, not just etzem of elikus. So we need constantly both. And that in many ways on a mitzvah level is the difference between Yud-K and Vav-K.
Rabbi Simon, what you said about Ktanom ve'ad gedoylom, the pshat means today Ktanom ve'ad gedoylom. Not
that's your pshat. But the pshat of Chassidus is what I just said. The Rebbe's father says. Because where do you get that pshat? Ktanom ve'ad gedoylom. The pasuk says, "An losid lavi." That's one pshat. That would be pshuta shamikra maybe. But the deeper pshat is that there'll be ktanom ve'ad gedoylom losid lavi too.
Okay, you said that the Rebbe's father is saying it. Okay. And the second thing that you spoke now about avodah, that it has to be internalized. This is today. But le'osid lavoi, it will be after the avodah. It will be the gilui ha'atzmut.
But it's a result of the avodah. Schar mitzvah. Without the avodah, you don't have a losid lavoi. It's the avodah that creates. The osid lavoi is a revelation of what is happening today. My saying about it, the saying to reveal. Our avodah reveals the elikus within us, so then the osid lavoi, it actually becomes revealed. That's the result. That's what he keeps saying. Schar mitzvah. The mitzvahs now cause the osid lavoi to come. It doesn't come magically. It comes because of the avodah and as a result of the avodah.
That's true, but the osid lavoi, when the result will happen, we won't need the ishtalshelus because the avodah was done.
Absolutely
already.
not. That's absolutely wrong. What you just said. It's exactly opposite with everything I've been explaining. There won't be tachteinim. There'll be existence. If there's no existence, then what's the whole purpose of it? Then we might as well go to lifniat tzimtzum without anything. What do we need anything for? The whole purpose is that this tachteinim should be saturated with elikus.
Yeah, that's true, of course.
Where do you see that the world will cease to exist? If the world sees it, if there's no Seder Ishtalshelus, there's no world. No, of course there'll be Seder Ishtalshelus. There'll be Atzilus, there'll be Bria, there'll be everything. Where did you ever hear that there won't be all these levels?
Because it's going to be the Gilui Atzmus.
Okay, I don't know what to say.
Okay, so you're saying that the Seder Ishtalshelus is making.
I mean, you ever saw anywhere it says that? The whole point is exact opposite. I'm not sure where you're getting that.
Okay. And the last thing that he's saying, the B'chinas HaMalchus will be B'chinas Isgalus Helem or Atzmi Mamish. So that means that all the things Yud-K and Vav-K, which is Giluyim or more than Giluyim, Helem Atzmi, but B'chinas HaMalchus will be in a higher level.
So what?
True? That's true. I want to know.
What do you mean? I'm not going to disagree with the Rebbe Rashab. If he says it, he says it. I'm disagreeing with what you're saying, not with what the Rebbe Rashab says.
Okay.
Anyway, I never heard that concept even, that there won't be a Seder Shtalshelus, there won't be existence. I mean, existence will cease to be. Where does that say anywhere?
No, I did not mean it won't be existence. I meant to say that we won't need the whole entire Seder Shtalshelus.
1 second.
But
who
you
says we won't need it? We do need it. We will need it. We absolutely will need it because that's the structure that God created. The Seder Shtalshelus is God's creation, not ours. He wants that Seder Shtalshelus to be elevated to the. If etzem without Seder Shtalshelus, you might as well not have a Seder Shtalshelus. What's the point then? The whole point is adira b'tachteinim. There should be a Seder Shtalshelus and Real Yenim, and there'll be Tachteinim. And then that should be Nizgala, the Etzem. There'll be Kalim. The whole point is that there will be Kalim. You're saying that there can't be Kalim without Seder Shtalshelus.
Okay.
There'll be Iris, there'll be Kalim, there'll be everything. It will always be elevated. Okay. Anyway, I believe I explained it well. I think you're stuck in your own mind before my explanation, to be very honest. And I think you should listen again and go over it again. I think you have a preconceived notion, it sounds to me, and you're trying to fit it into that notion. I'm just pointing that out.
Maybe he's confused.
You explained that the Ishtalshelus makes the world to exist. Okay.
Will there be Chochmah, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Ed, Yesod, Malchus, or not?
Okay. Could you tell us what is Malchus? How is Malchus going to be different then from all the other things?
I think I just explained it. I honestly feel that you didn't hear what I said. I'm just going to repeat myself.
He's saying that.
I told you, don't use the word Malchus. Find an example in this world for Malchus and use that to understand it. And I gave a few examples for it. What are you saying, Yitzchak?
I was saying, it seems like Rabbi Teitel is confusing the revelation of godliness in Malchus from, meaning Atzmus. If Malchus is going to be Megale and it's going to shine Atzmus, if you will, he's somehow saying it's going to transpose it. It's going to take the place of it. But there's a big difference between the revelation of it and changing its very nature, its very intrinsic existence. It's not saying he's going to change the structure of existence. He's saying existence is going to reflect that highest level of godliness. Those are two very different statements. And it sounds like that's where Rabbi Teitel's getting a little confused. He's saying like Malchus is going to turn to Atzmus. It's not what the Rabbi Rishab says. I think that's the confusion.
Maybe.
Yeah.
You can ask a question. What about when mitzvahs betelis la'asad lavi? When it says mitzvahs will no longer be la'asad lavi, how does that fit with all of this? So even that will be explained. I think it's explained later in Ayin Beis. If not, it's explained elsewhere. That doesn't mean there won't be mitzvahs. It means that mitzvahs will go back to their source. So they're butl as they are today in a manifest way. But the point being is that we did not spend 5,782 years in this difficult world to just go to a place where everything in this world disappears. We spent this time to achieve the ultimate goal, which is that this darkest of worlds should become a dirad le'izbara b'tachtenim. And that's why there'll be neshamas begufim. Tchias hamesim neshamas begufim. Even when the etzem will be revealed, there'll be a neshama in a guf, a soul inside of a body. That's the ultimate reward. Not like the Rambam who says the ultimate is the neshama alone. So the guf will be saturated, will all be elevated to that level, as he said here. Okay, that is a good distinction you made, Yitzchak, which maybe could helpful. Okay. So let's continue now. Next paragraph, page 1277. V'zehu, and the pages can be found at ayinbeis.com. V'zehu sha'amru, and this is what Chazal say. Our sages say, schar mitzvah b'ha'al meleka. That the reward for mitzvah in this world you don't have the reward for the mitzvah in this world. What does that mean? Didn't he ask? He asked earlier. We do have the reward in this world, in Gan Eden. And even in the psukim are filled with verses that say we have reward. And the 5 things that are spelled out that we eat from it, their fruit in this world. So he says, Pirush, Bahai Alma, the meaning of this world, or Bahai Alma means that world, which means this world, the physical world. Elam Hazeh, Koyigam al Gan Eden. The meaning of Hay Alma includes also Gan Eden, because we're not talking about Elam Haba. Hay Alma would be, the contrast to this world would be the world to come, Elam Haba, as in the future. But Gan Eden is something that's now exists as well. V'emer, the schar mitzvah de Elam Haba, what the Chazal is saying is not that you don't have any schar mitzvah, period. The schar mitzvah of Elam Haba, the future schar mitzvah, that revelation of Yudke that we're talking about now, and the revelation within Vavke, Leka b'Hai Alma, doesn't exist in this. Leka is not there in this world. Why? The Kol Hamshach is the mitzvah achsha of Gam Gan Eden Ha'elyon, because all the Hamshachas, all the energy generated by mitzvahs, now, also in the higher Gan Eden, which is even a deeper level of Giluyim, as we learned. It comes from the Kavana Primi is the inner Kavana, as we learned from chapter 41 in Tanya. Who Kamoisha Eisius Yudkehim Bechiluf Adbash. Because all the Hamshachas, even the highest Hamshachas, are all how the letters of Yudke come in through the exchange of Adbash, Aleph Tov, Beis Shin, Mem Tzadik. She'ein ze etzem mitzvah. That's not the core schar mitzvah, the core essence of the mitzvah. It's What he means that's not etzem ha-mitzvah means that it's in a garment called the chiluf of Mem Tzadik. The etzem ha-mitzvah meaning how the core essence, how it is in the divine, in God, in the purest form, not through any slapsus, that true schar, which he says schar mitzvah mitzvah, the etzem ha-sherish, that's when Yila Osid canal. That will be in the future. That's why Chazal say B'hayal Maleket, because we don't have the Gili of the Etzem. We have Vovke, we don't have the Yudke, or we have the Yudke through the Mem Tzadik, through the Chiluf, through the exchange. Aval Habroche Shel HaMitzvah, the Gashmis. Mebchinis Yudke Shebe Mitzvah. Now he adds the word Habroche Shel HaMitzvah, the Gashmis. What does he mean by the bracha of the mitzvah? I mean, does he mean literally the brachas ha-mitzvahs? I don't think so. Anyway, he says, Aval ha-bracha shel ha-mitzvah begashmis, mebchinis yudke sheba mitzvah. The bracha of the mitzvah in its physical form, which comes from the level of yudke sheba mitzvah, sheba chiluf asfin. Okay. He's saying the bracha of the mitzvah is like the yudke, but the yudke as it comes in the chiluf of, what did he say? Let me just see something. Maybe he means to say what he said in the previous page, that the Aveda, the Mem Tzadik is asiyas mitzvah b'kabol sel macham l'kaim rotzen is baruch, l'kaim ritzeni l'maylam chinas tainug. Maybe. And Vovke is kedusha savaya. Not sure. Anyway, but he's saying like this, that the bracha of the mitzvah begashmis, which is the yudke in the mitzvah, but it's the yudke as it comes in the chiluf, in the exchange of adbash, of the letters. Shebechiluf asfin, it comes in the exchange of the letters. The yud is replaced by the mem, and the tzad, and the hey is replaced by the tzadik. The kolshke mebchin is vovke shebe mitzvah, and definitely the level of vovke shebe mitzvah. Nimsha gamata l'chol ha'elam is bechlal. So the etzem hamshachas ha-mitzvah, that remains concealed in this world. And that will be revealed losid. But the bracha of the mitzvah, which comes through the exchange of the yud-kei to mem tzadik, and for sure the vavkei of the mitzvah, which the actual performance of the mitzvah begashmius, nimsha gam ato, is also transmitted and generated also now, l'chol ha'elam is bechlal, to all the worlds in general, mereish kol dargin, Shebeganeden de Bria, at Seif Madreges Dasiya. From the highest levels of Gan Eden and Bria, which is Gan Eden and Elyon, all the way to the lowest levels in Asiya. That is generated now. But it's generated Yud K through the Mem Tzadik. And even the Yud K is there, but it's through Mem Tzadik. Gam Ayin Sodim, B'chol Mishpachas Ha'adama. And also, it also manifests, remember we said a mitzvah in Gashmias is in the domain, if you remember, of Noiga. Because whether it's a esrig or other physical matters, before they become a mitzvah, they're in whose domain are they? They're in the domain of Klippas Nega of this world, as we learned, before they become a mitzvah. So he says now the Hamshach is not only in the Ishtalshalos, from the highest levels to the lowest, but also in the world of Ayin Sodim are the 70 ministers. They represent the 70 nations. Basically means the material world, even of the non-Jewish world, the whole secular world, the world of the mundane world, the Ayin Sodim, B'chol Mishpachas Ha'adama, which is a reference to all the families, all the nations of the earth, U'B'chol Shefa Tatzach, the Neged Asiyah. And every flow, every manifestation of Daimim Tzemei Achai, of Nega, of Klippas Nega, which is the transparent Klippa. It's a Klippa, but it's not like Shalosh Klippas Atmeis. It's neutral, but potentially could have manifested says Kedusha. You could do a mitzvah through this Nega. You can't do a mitzvah with Shalosh Klippas Atmeis. Alter Rebbe says in the beginning of chapter 37. He talks about an esrog, the apostle esrog. Esrog, what does he call it there? Esrog, it brings the din of an esrog that's not kosher. But bottom line is, through a mitzvah, through the mitzvahs, you generate energy through all the worlds, from the highest, from Gan Eden, Elyon, Bria, all the way to Asiya, all the way into the nations of the world, and into Daimim Tzemei Achai, mineral, vegetable, and animal of Nega of Asiya. So a mitzvah does all that. That's what a mitzvah does. You look in chapter 37 in Tanya, he explains it very powerfully. Why all the Giluyim of the Osud Lave, even the Gilui Atzmi, are all dependent on Maseinu V'Avodaseinu, because Schar mitzvah, he says, because when we do a mitzvah, we're generating godliness into this world. So every time you do a mitzvah, you're basically revealing a piece of Geula, a piece of Mashiach. So when it all accumulates, the loss of love is a result of our Aveda in this world. Maseinu V'Avodaseinu, he says, B'kol Zman Meshech HaGolus. All the 6,000 years, all the work that we do. So he's saying, so that is all generated by mitzvahs. But the Yud-Kei is still coming through a Mem Tzadik today. That's why he says Schar Mitzvah, meaning Schar Mitzvah B'Hayalma. In all these worlds, it's not the Etzem of the Schar Mitzvah. That's the Rebbe Rashab's edition. The Etzem of Schar Mitzvah, not the Giluyim of the Schar Mitzvah.
That's like the Einoi Orlo, he's saying.
Yeah, Orlo, right, correct. Orlo, yeah. Because that would make it show correct. Shari Yedua, because it's known. V'nizbar le'il. And it was, well, let me stop for a moment. Any questions on what we just learned right now? So he answered the question. Still continuing, but I want to just stop in case anything needs clarification here.
No, it's possible that when he's saying habracha, the bracha is not a different level. He is mechalek between amitas eschar v'amshacha, which is oisius yudke not bechiluf, and then he's saying that if it's bechiluf, then there is a hamshacha. He's not saying that bracha is different from the hamshacha.
The bracha is part of the mitzvah. Bracha shal mitzvah begashim b'chinas yudke. He's associating the bracha to the yudke as it manifests in the chiluf of Mem Tzadik.
That's right. Right. The chiluk is not between.
That's what I said. Yeah. Okay. How do you do it? Continuing, because it's known. V'nizbar le'il, and was explained earlier. The b'chinas yichud chutzeni da'ava. Oh, he's now connecting it to that. Okay. That the outer unification, or outer unity of Abba v'Ima. Remember, we spoke about the outer unity, which is more the energy as it relates to existence. That's more like aim revetzes ala frechim, revia ema revia albanin. Where there you're talking about how the mother and including the father are all connected more to the midas. Chitzenius, so he said yichud chitzeni dava, ubchinas yichud chitzeni dezun. And the outer union of Zoh and Malchus, which we also learned about, the derech klal zeh amshacha mibchinas vovke. That in general is the amshacha of the level of vovke. That's how the energy relates to existence. Shezeh sheirush shemakar elements. Yeah, that's the root and source of existence of the worlds. Like we said, the oir, that's meir la'elemis, the energy as it relates to another. Harizeh nimshach tamid be'elemis. La'avesam or la'chiesam tamid. Yichud Chitzeni is always being transmitted because it has to keep existence it has to sustain existence. So you constantly need the divine energy that's there in existence, even without avodah. La'avesam, to bring them into being, ula'chiesam tamid, and to energize them and vitalize them consistently. Rak sheyachal liyah shetiyah hashpah b'tzimtzum b'yeser. But then, in those circumstances, it's possible that hashpah should be very diminished, just the bare minimum of energy to keep existence alive. And through the performance of mitzvahs, through which you transmit the inner pnimi. Why is it yichud pnimi? Remember I explained. Because the world on its own is a piece of art. It's God's art. The world on its own is the structure God created. But if you want to know why did God create it, What is the Bereshis, B'Shvil Yisrael, B'Shvil HaTorah? You need mitzvahs. Mitzvahs is what's going on in the artist's mind and the artist's soul of why he put this whole thing in place in the first place, in existence in the first place. So therefore, when you do a mitzvah, you're not just accessing the divine wisdom in creation, you're accessing the yichud pnimi of Chachma and Bina and of Zah and Malchus. So through that you generate pnimius, you generate from the level of pnimius, the pnimius hakavana of creation, into the dimension of the outer dimension. Why? Because a mitzvah combined is a bridge between two. The mitzvah is not just a spiritual activity, it's a physical mitzvah, but it's the Ratzna Elyon in the Esrog. And when you do the mitzvah, you're not just generating, you're in addition to the minimal pilot flame, so to speak, the minimal energy that vitalizes existence, you're drawing from the inner engine room, so to speak, of the divine engine room, and you're drawing it into Chetzenius, the world. That's what a mitzvah does. It brings it into this world, the Ratzna Elyon. This Pnimi Abba Ve'ima. Okay, so brings among begin zeggen Bimi. Begin sagt the Oz, the Chetzenius Siberibe Hashpa. And that causes, and then the Chetzenius too is now an abundant flow because you've opened up the channels from the inner workings, the inner reservoirs, so to speak, of the divine intention and existence, and it's now flowing in a much more abundant way, not just the minimal there just to create existence. In other words, in the 6 days of creation, before Adam and Chava came, you have God created, Asar Ma'amoris Nivra Elam, Vayemer Elokim, but it's all Shem Elokim. Even Gan Eden is Havaya Elokim, but it still has a limited flow based on the creation. Then comes Adam and Chava, and they do Aveda. What do? They make the garden blossom and thrive far more than its original. Because Torah Mitzvahs accesses the whole purpose of creation. Why is Rosh Hashanah the 6th day of creation, not the first day? Today is the beginning of your creation. Why is it? But it's the 6th day. Because the first day of creation was not the purpose. That was setting the stage. Like the Gemara says, the Mishnah says, why was the human being created last? Because first you set the table. And then you bring your special guest. On 6th day is the purpose of creation, the Pnimius. On day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and even 6 till human being was created, it's the Chetzenius, not the Pnimius. The Pnimius HaKavana is on day 6, because the Adam comes and does mitzvahs, L'Avda L'Shamra, and those mitzvahs reveal the Pnimius in the Chetzenius, that the world now is standing not just because God created and giving it the minimal energy, but now this abundant energy is flowing from the Pnimius into the Chetzenius. Like it says elsewhere, the yichud ha'pnimi legabe ha'chitzeni u'kamay haneshama legabe haguf. The inner union compared to the outer one is like a soul compared to a body. U'ke'erech muhus haguf be'es hashina legabe kishehu ha'er. And another similar difference would be like the comparison, the proportion between the muhus haguf while it's asleep, what is a sleeping body, and when it awakens. Shaneshama me'iraba. So when it's asleep, the soul is on a minimal, like he said, minimal energy. The world is asleep, or the human being is asleep. But then when you awaken and the neshama me'iraba, the neshama now, neshama shenasata b'taheri, shachzarta b'nishmasi. The soul comes back and is active, fully active, not just the minimum that the minimum that is necessary during sleep, where the vital organs and everything is functioning, but you're not functioning. Your mind and emotions are not functioning at full power. So then, when the neshama me'irabay v'nirabay v'chayis, and you see visibly the energy and the vitality. By contrast, during sleep, you don't see the chayas that much. You don't see the vitality as you see in a waking person. Like when we see it on a face. He's comparing it. When you look at this person's face, you see they're alive much more than when you look at their back. Now, the back is also alive, but you don't see it quite the same way. You look at someone's face, you could see their animation, their sparkle in the eyes, and everything that a face reveals. So that's why Pnimi and Chetzeni. The Panim reflects the inner, so you see that vitality. The back reflects the outer, so you don't see it as much. So the difference between a Shama and a Guf, like a sleeping person and awake. And the same thing is Bebchinis Yichud Chetzeni. In Yichud Chetzeni, which is without Avodah, the minimum, the divine energy does not radiate in a revealed way that much. And it's possible that it should also be in a very diminished way. Like we say in Pasach Eliyahu in Tikkun Ezeir, that when stastalik, when the energy is removed, it remains like a body without a soul. So there's energy, but it's very minimal. The Makol Mokim Nimshcha Chayis. Nevertheless, there's some chayis, some vitality, vanilla b'yesed, but it's diminished and much and increasingly concealed. Vayichud, next page, 1274. Vayichud Pnimi, and the inner yichud, who b'chinas neshama lahachitzeni. And the inner yichud is like a neshama to the outer. It's the soul of the outer dimension, meaning the vitality is being revealed. That the neshama is giving into the chitzeni, into the body, into the outer, is giving it strength and power. To be in a state of abundant and increased energy, the riboy ashpa, and abundant and increased transmission or flow. Flow would be the right word. And I'll just read the parentheses and then I'll stop. The Gam Yesh, in addition, you also have Gili HaPnimius. So in addition to the Pnimius radiating into the Chitzenius, which we like Yudke and Tevavke, you also have the Gili of the Pnimius, like we see. So in other words, besides that, the very physical, the Kalim, the outer, I should say, are now being vitalized. You also have the Pnimius is now an abundant taste with Seir, Basagas and Neshamas. That when the Neshamas are alive, like in this fashion, so then their comprehension is much more abundant, the abundant energy in their understanding, but Teda and learning Teda. The taste was Chai is Ba'aveda Shebelev, Ubekim Mitzvos. And additional energy and vitality in the service of their heart and in the performance of mitzvahs. In other words, when it's in a minimal state, a person could also do Teda Aveda Gemilas Chasadim. You could have Teda and you could have Aveda Shebelev, but it's on a minimal, like mitzvahs anoshim ulamada, mechanical mitzvahs. But when the neshama is alive and awake, which is the process that he says Teda and mitzvahs really creates in general, it brings it all alive. Also, that even on the neshama level, besides it radiating in the chitzenius, in the guf, it itself also is far more dynamic and vitalized, much more vitality.
What does it mean, radiating in the guf? What does it mean?
What?
This is Tesis Oyer Ba'avodah, no? What is radiating? This is not Tesis Oyer Ba'avodah or Ba'asoga?
No. It's making the body could be very limited. He's not speaking in Aveda. He's speaking about existence is very minimal energy, and this adds a lot more energy into existence, like a person who's awake. But you're not speaking so much on the neshama. You're not saying what it adds to the neshama. You're saying what it adds to the guf. Anyway, he's not finished yet, but I'm going to stop here because he's going to still talk about what's about the schar mitzvahs that we do have. And he's going to discuss that. And then La'asad love is going to be, so your question may be answered in the next few lines. But I'm going to stop here. Top of page 1278. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah, he's going to speak more about it. So just be patient. Tomorrow probably we'll cover it. We'll cover it tomorrow. Look, he's tying it all together now. He's bringing it all together. And yeah, it sounds to me these two things are like the Yud K within the Vav K and the Yud K on its own. That's what it sounds like to me a bit. But it's not correct. I want to correct myself because he's talking Zman Hazeh. This is what mitzvahs do now. Now l'osid lave. But there's a similarity when he says the Gam Yesh Gilia Primius. We'll talk about it more when we read further on.